I was in the middle of repotting a rose bush when my phone buzzed on the porch railing. I had dirt under my fingernails and a pair of gardening gloves hanging from my back pocket, and honestly, I was happy. It was a Saturday in early October. The light was doing that soft gold thing it does before the trees fully turn, and I had nowhere to be until Monday. My husband passed 4 years ago, and I'd learned, slowly, painfully, that Saturdays were mine again. I was still learning what to do with that. I picked up the phone without looking at who it was. I assumed it was my friend Gretchen calling about the church potluck. It wasn't Gretchen, it was my son-in-law. A text, not a call. And I remember standing there reading it twice, 3 times, the rosebush completely forgotten, a little cloud of dried dirt falling off my glove onto the porch boards. Hey Norma, just so you know, we're doing Christmas at your place this year. Already told the whole family. Abby's been so stressed with the new baby and everything, so we figured you'd want to help out. It'll be around 35 people. We'll need you to handle the food and hosting. You're the best at this stuff. Thanks. I read it again. 35 people. Already told the whole family. I stood there for a moment with the sun on my face and my rosebush half out of its pot and thought, he did not just do that. Then I typed back the quietest message I've written in 63 years of living. That's going to be a lovely Christmas, Mitchell. I hope everyone has a wonderful time. I'll be in Asheville with Gretchen through the 27th. Merry Christmas. I set the phone down. I put my gloves back on. I finished repotting the rosebush. The first call came 40 minutes later. Let me back up because none of this started with that text. It started, I think, about 6 years ago when my daughter Abby got married, and I told myself that the most loving thing I could do was make room. Make room in my life, in my schedule, in my house. That's what mothers do. I believed that. I still believe a version of it. Abby is my youngest. She has her father's eyes and my stubbornness and a laugh that fills a room so completely that you forget what you were worried about. When she was small, she used to climb into my bed on Sunday mornings, and we would read the comics together, her head on my shoulder. And I would think, I would do anything for this child. Anything at all. She married Mitchell Graves at 28. Outdoor ceremony, September, absolutely perfect weather. I cried through the whole thing. Happy tears. Mitchell seemed solid. He worked in commercial real estate, which I didn't entirely understand, but he was attentive to Abby, and he remembered my birthday, and he always cleaned his plate at dinner. I thought we'd be fine. We were fine for a while. The first thing I noticed, and I told myself I was being uncharitable, was that Mitchell had a particular way of framing. He never asked for anything. He informed you that something was happening and let you figure out your role in it. When they needed a down payment for their first house, he didn't say, "We were hoping you might help." He said, "We found a place. We'll need about $40,000 to close." As if I were a bank he was notifying of a transaction. I gave them the $40,000. It was money from my retirement savings. I told myself it was a gift freely given, which it was, but the way it was requested stayed with me. Then came the grandchildren, my granddaughter Harper, now 4, and the new baby, a boy they named Jax, who is 7 months old and looks exactly like Abby did at that age, round and serious and deeply unimpressed by the world. Having grandchildren changed something in me, made me softer in some ways, and in other ways much, much clearer about what I would and would not accept. Because those children deserved a grandmother who had her dignity intact, and I'd been slowly, quietly letting it erode. I am 63 years old. I taught 4th grade for 31 years. I have organized more school carnivals, holiday pageants, and end-of-year celebrations than I can count. I know how to make 75 cupcakes from scratch while simultaneously managing a room full of 9-year-olds. I know how to handle logistics. I know how to host. And because I know how to host, people, specifically Mitchell, had come to treat it as a service I provided rather than something I chose to offer. My house is a 4-bedroom Victorian I've owned outright for 12 years, since my husband Richard and I paid it off together. It has a wraparound porch and a dining room with a table that seats 12, and it is mine. I have restored every inch of it, the original hardwood floors, the window casings, the kitchen tile. When Richard got sick, we spent his last good summer on that porch together, drinking lemonade and watching the neighborhood go by. That house is not just square footage to me. 3 Christmases ago, Mitchell started calling my house the obvious choice for holiday gatherings. 2 Christmases ago, Abby started apologizing in advance for how many people were coming, which I took as a sign that she understood it was a lot to ask. Last Christmas, 30 people came through my door over a 2-day period, and I cooked for all of them. And on the day after Christmas, I sat in my kitchen at 7 in the morning, too tired to sleep, and thought, nobody asked me. They never actually asked me. I didn't say anything. I just cleaned up and told myself family was family. Then October came. Mitchell's text came, and something in me, very quietly, without drama, decided it was done. The first call was from Abby. I let it go to voicemail, finished watering the rosebush, and came inside to make myself a cup of tea. I listened to the voicemail while the kettle heated. Mom, Mitchell told me he texted you, and I know how it probably sounded. Can you just call me back? I'm sure we can figure something out. She sounded tired. She always sounds tired now with the baby. Part of me wanted to call her back immediately. Make it easy. Say fine. I'll do it. That old reflex. The one that says, your discomfort is someone else's emergency. I let the tea steep for 4 minutes. I looked out at my garden. Then I called her back. Hi, sweetheart. Mom, I'm so sorry about the text. Mitchell sent it before we even really talked about it. She paused. Okay, we talked about it, but I told him he should ask you properly, and he said you'd say yes anyway, so. Another pause. I know how that sounds. It sounded exactly like what it was. Abby, I said, where is your mother-in-law spending Christmas? Silence. Florida. Her sister's place. And where is your brother spending Christmas? He's going to Tess's family in Portland. So the 2 options were, ask me to host 35 people, or figure out an alternative. She didn't answer that. I love you, I said. I love those babies. But I already made plans. I'm going to Asheville. Mom, Mitchell already told his whole side of the family. Her voice got a little high. His parents, his cousins, his aunt, everyone thinks Christmas is at your house. That, I said, very calmly, is Mitchell's problem to solve. I had never said anything like that to my daughter in my life. There was a silence on the line that had a particular quality to it. Not angry, just stunned, like she was recalibrating. Okay, she finally said. Okay, Mom. We hung up. I sat with my tea and waited for my heart rate to return to normal. It took a few minutes. Mitchell called that evening. I expected him to be annoyed. He was something else. He was charming, which I have learned over the years is often more dangerous. Norma, I want to apologize if the text came across wrong. I know it was last minute. But I want you to understand, this would really mean a lot to Abby. She's run down with the baby, and being around family at Christmas would lift her spirits. And honestly, nobody does it like you. You set a table like a professional. The kids are going to remember this forever. He went on for a while in that vein. I let him. Mitchell, I said when he finished. I am going to say this once, so please listen carefully. I am not available to host Christmas this year. I have made other plans. I'm happy to help you find a venue or to recommend a caterer, but my house is not available and I am not going to change my answer. I hope that's clear. Another silence. A caterer! He said it like I'd suggested something mildly offensive. Yes, there are several good ones in the area. I can send you some names if you'd like. He said he'd think about it. He did not thank me. He hung up. I turned off the kitchen light and went to bed at 9 o'clock. I slept better than I had in months. The next 2 weeks were interesting. Mitchell did not think about it quietly. Mitchell, I came to understand, had told his family that Christmas was at my house, and he was not prepared to untell them. So instead of making alternative plans, he began a campaign. It was subtle at first. His mother, Fran, sent me a card, an actual physical card in the mail, that said how much she was looking forward to seeing my beautiful home at the holidays. His cousin sent an email asking if there were dietary restrictions he should let the group know about, addressed to me as if I were the event coordinator. His Aunt Phyllis, a woman I have met exactly 3 times in 6 years, called my cell phone at 8:30 on a Wednesday morning to tell me how touched she was that I was doing this for the family. Every single one of these communications assumed I had agreed to something I had not agreed to. I replied to each one politely. I'm afraid there's been a miscommunication. You'll want to check with Mitchell about Christmas plans, as those arrangements have changed. Mitchell called again. This time he was less charming. You're embarrassing me in front of my family. Mitchell, I haven't said anything unkind to your family. I've simply told them to check with you. By saying plans have changed, you're implying I did something wrong. You told 35 people they were spending Christmas at my house without asking me. That is something wrong. He went quiet. Then, Abby is devastated, you know. She's barely sleeping with the baby, and now she has to deal with this family drama on top of everything. This one landed, as I think he intended it to. I felt the familiar pull, the guilt, the sense that maybe I was making everything worse by holding my ground. I thought of Abby. I thought of her tired voice, and then I thought of something my mother used to say. She used to say, Norma, guilt is just love with nowhere to go. Figure out where to put it. Tell Abby I love her, I said. Tell her I'd love to come visit in January when things are quieter. Tell her I'm bringing enough casseroles to fill her freezer. But I am not hosting Christmas. That is final. Here is the part I didn't tell Mitchell. I had, in fact, been making plans, just not the ones he assumed. 2 years ago, after Richard died and I had some time alone to think, I sat down with a financial planner and a very good estate attorney named Rosalind. I had been thinking about what I wanted to leave behind, and more specifically, who I wanted to leave it to, and how I wanted it structured so that nobody, well-meaning or otherwise, could make decisions about my assets on my behalf before I was done making them myself. Richard and I had worked for 40 years. We had been careful. The house was paid off. There was a modest investment portfolio. There was the retirement fund. I had never spoken about any of it in specifics with my children, because money in families tends to create architecture around it. Assumptions, expectations, resentments, entitlement. I had watched it happen in other families, and I had wanted no part of it. What I had done, quietly, in the spring of that year, was put the house into a revocable trust. The trust named Harper and Jacks as beneficiaries when I passed, with conditions about age and a professional trustee to manage the distribution. I had also updated my will and established a healthcare directive and a durable power of attorney, because I believe in tidying your own house before someone else decides to do it for you. Abby did not know the specifics of this. Mitchell certainly did not know, which is why what happened in mid-November surprised me, and then, as I turned it over, didn't surprise me at all. I was at the grocery store, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, so it was crowded, everyone loading up carts with the specific anxiety of a holiday approaching, when I ran into a woman named Connie, who was on the HOA board and knew everyone's business in a 3-mile radius. Connie is not malicious. She's just porous. Information goes in and comes back out without her entirely meaning for it to. Norma! She grabbed my arm near the butter display. I was so sorry to hear you might be selling the house. I hope things are okay. I looked at her. I'm not selling the house, Connie. She blinked. Oh, I must have gotten confused. Someone mentioned, I think it was at the garden club, that your son-in-law was looking into the property on your street. Showing it to developers or something? I assumed. She trailed off when she saw my face. Thank you, Connie, I said. I'll figure out where the confusion started. I finished my shopping. I drove home. I sat in my car in the driveway for a long time looking at the front of my house. The porch Richard built the railing for, the window boxes I plant every spring, the original glass in the front door that you can only get replaced if you know a very particular kind of glazier. Then I called Rosalind. She answered on the third ring. Rosalind, I said. I need to understand something. If someone were to approach a developer about a property that is held in a revocable trust, a property where I am the grantor and trustee, what could they legally represent to that developer? Rosalind was quiet for a moment. Legally? Nothing. The trust is the legal owner. You are the sole trustee. No one else has standing to represent or negotiate on behalf of the trust. So if someone were telling a developer they had interest in the property, they'd be misrepresenting themselves. Depending on what they said and what actions they took, it could be considered fraud. I thanked her. I went inside. I made dinner. I did not call Mitchell. I wanted to understand the shape of the thing first. I understood the shape of it within the week. Mitchell's cousin, the one who had emailed me about dietary restrictions, was, I discovered through Connie and one mildly awkward phone call, a developer, commercial and residential both. He had recently expanded into the kind of adaptive reuse projects that were picking up in our area. Old Victorians converted to boutique bed and breakfasts, that sort of thing. My house is exactly the kind of property those projects target. And Mitchell, who worked in commercial real estate and understood square footage and assessed value, and what old Victorians in established neighborhoods were worth, had apparently been having preliminary conversations with his cousin about my house. Without mentioning this to me, while simultaneously trying to get me committed to hosting Christmas, meaning my house would be full of his family, giving his cousin a natural opportunity to walk through and assess it. I sat with this for several days. I told no one. Then I called the one person I trust absolutely with information like this, my older sister, Doreen. Doreen is 71 and retired from 30 years as a family court judge. She has a voice that has made many people reconsider their choices. She listened to me without interrupting, which she can do for approximately 6 minutes before the judge in her takes over. Norma, yes, you understand what he was doing with the Christmas thing. I understand now. He wanted his cousin in your house. That's what it looks like. And the deed is everything still in the trust, every bit of it. There was a silence and then Doreen laughed. Not a mean laugh. A laugh of someone who has spent 30 years watching people make very poor decisions while in full possession of all the facts. They didn't know about the trust, she said. No! So they thought they were maneuvering around a 63-year-old woman who owns a house outright and doesn't know what it's worth. Apparently. And instead, they were maneuvering around a 63-year-old woman who owns a house outright, knows exactly what it's worth, and put it in a trust 18 months ago. That's correct. Another silence. What are you going to do? I thought about it. I'm going to let them finish arranging their chess pieces, I said. And then I'm going to remind them that it's my board. The call came on a Tuesday evening, 9 days before Christmas. It was Mitchell. He said, a business proposition he wanted to discuss. His voice had the particular register it takes on when he's decided he's being reasonable. Measured, friendly, faintly condescending. I'll come over, he said. Is Thursday okay? Thursday is fine. He arrived at 6:30 with a folder, an actual folder, the kind with the little clasp. He sat down at my kitchen table and I brought out coffee, and he opened the folder. And for the next 15 minutes, I listened to him explain that his cousin's firm was very interested in properties like mine, that the market was strong, that I was sitting on something really valuable, that it might be time to think about downsizing, that the money from a sale could set me up very comfortably, and, here he paused for effect, he had taken the liberty of pulling together some comparable sales in the area. He slid a printout across the table. It showed 3 recent sales. Victorian homes, similar square footage, similar age. The numbers were impressive. I looked at the printout. I looked at Mitchell. I said, "Who holds title to this house, Mitchell?" He blinked. "You do." "How do you know that?" "Because you own it. You've owned it for..." He looked momentarily uncertain. "You and Richard bought it." "Pull out your phone," I said. "Look up the county property records. Our county assessor's office has an online portal. Go ahead." He looked at me. He looked at his phone. He typed for a moment. His face changed. It shows a trust. Yes, the Norma Jean Whitfield Revocable Trust. That's right." He was quiet for a long moment. "When did you?" He stopped. Started again. "I didn't know about this. You weren't meant to." "Norma, He closed the folder, opened it, closed it again. "This changes the conversation." "It changes your conversation," I said. "Mine has been pretty consistent." He left 40 minutes later, the folder still under his arm, most of his coffee untouched. What happened after that was in some ways the hardest part. because the hard part was never Mitchell. The hard part was Abby. She called the next morning. She had talked to Mitchell. She knew about the trust, now, and about my conversation with Rosalind. And, through some combination of guilt and genuine hurt, she had arrived at a version of events in which I had been hiding things from her. "You never told me about the trust." "Mom, no, I didn't." "Don't you think I had a right to know?" This is the question I had been waiting for, the one I had turned over 100 times in the months since I'd set up the trust. And I had an answer, but I wanted to give it carefully. "Abby, did you know what Mitchell was planning with the house?" Silence. "Did you know his cousin was looking at it?" He said it was just a conversation." Her voice was very small. "Mom, I didn't think he was going to do anything. I thought he talks about real estate all the time. I didn't think." She stopped, and then, quietly, "I should have told you." "Yes, you should have. I'm sorry." I closed my eyes. In the background, I could hear baby Jax making that small, constant sound that babies make, that sound like they're just checking that the world is still there. "I know," I said. "I know you are, sweetheart." We talked for a long time, about her father a little, about how tired she was, about the baby, about Harper, who had just started asking why about everything in a way that was both exhausting and completely wonderful, about how Mitchell and I would need some time before things were easy between us, if they ever were, about the trust and what it meant that Harper and Jax would have something, someday, something real, that I had thought about them before they were old enough to know there was anything to think about. Abby cried. I let her. I didn't try to fix it, or move past it, or wrap it up neatly. I just stayed on line. "Are you still going to Asheville for Christmas?" she asked finally. "Yes." "Okay." A breath. "Will you come in January, like you said, with the casseroles? I'll bring enough to fill both shelves of your freezer." Gretchen and I drove to Asheville on the 22nd. We rented a small house up in the hills, nothing fancy, with a gas fireplace and a porch that looked out over the valley. We cooked a Christmas dinner for two: a small roasted chicken, green beans, a sweet potato gratin that we'd been refining for years. We opened a good bottle of wine Gretchen had been saving. On Christmas morning, I called Abby. The baby was being held by one of Mitchell's aunts at his parents' house in the suburbs, and Harper was beside herself about a bicycle Santa had brought, and Abby sounded not perfect, but okay. She sounded like someone beginning to find her footing. Mitchell did not get on the phone. I did not expect him to. I walked out onto the porch after the call with my coffee, and there was frost on the railing, and the valley below was pale and still, and the sky was the particular blue that only happens in December in the mountains, hard and clean and absolutely clear. Richard would have loved it up here. He always wanted to take a trip to the Smokies, and we kept saying next year, and then next year became something else. I stayed on the porch for a long time, just breathing. I have a house that is mine. I have grandchildren who will inherit it someday, when I've finished loving every corner of it. I have a daughter who is still finding her way toward honesty, and I have enough patience left to wait for her. I have a sister who laughs like a judge and loves like a sister. I have a friend who saves good wine for the right occasion. I have a rose bush that survived October and will come back in the spring. I went inside and helped Gretchen with breakfast. That was enough. That was more than enough.